undeserved introduction, but excuse my tissue thing here. So are you able to see the screen? Naftali, are we on with my
Your screen is on, but you're not yet in presentation mode.
Okay, very good. All right. Here we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Very, very glad to be here today out of Clifton, New Jersey. As Naftali said, we live pretty close to each other. Appreciate the invitation to join you today to share with you some ideas. I got to work on that glare on my eyeglasses. I could just take them off, actually, but anyway, that's probably better. So we're talking today about how to get real-time, authentic feedback after any meeting, even a Zoom meeting. And in fact, today we are going to try to actually model this evaluation or feedback method at the end of our webinar. So you'll actually be seeing it live as well, not just in theory. And the modality that we're going to be using is strategic conversations. And I'm going to share with you how this is all going to work. And again, thank you all for joining today. Okay, yeah, already Naftali gave that whole introduction, so we can move on from there. I am going to open the chat so I can also see what might be coming my way as far as chat. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to share, to ask. Okay, Naftali, are we good with the screen, or do I need to go back to that screen?
You go back because it disappeared. Now we can see it.
Okay, fine. All right. So that's a little bit about me, and then let's move on to okay. So strategic conversations. So what they do is they provide for meaningful dialogue. They broaden a group's perspective. They elicit clear ideas and conclusions, and they allow the entire group to participate. The truth is, this model, which is initially developed and what I'm partially based on is a model, and I want to give credit where credit's due, based on a group out in Canada, ICA, and the couple of you may be familiar with it. It's more well known in the West Coast and maybe the Northwest, and I think probably up to the Midwest of our country, but it's not that well known on the East Coast. And I've adapted some of these ideas, especially specifically towards feedback, which is what we'll be talking about today. Feedback specifically, even more specifically, feedback at the end of a meeting. So there are, again, many, many uses of it. And then these are actual pictures of when I used it in a strategic planning group for a university in Texas, one of my strategic plans, and we actually broke out into groups, and we modeled this feedback method with these various groups. These photos are used with permission, of course. All right. So standard forms of feedback often provide inauthentic responses because they don't consider the 4 different orientations of how people generally process information. Okay. So here we go. The first thing is that if you're having a conversation, excuse me about the chat window. If you're having a conversation regarding any topic, let's say you had your meeting, you had your staff meeting, you had your faculty meeting, you had even if you had a family meeting, what to do about, where are we going to plan a vacation hopefully there will be time, or will be a place in the near future. And again, I hope everyone's healthy and safe during this very, very challenging time. So what do we do about planning a vacation? What do we do about this problem? We're in a staff meeting, we have this issue. Let's say if you're in a school setting, let's say you have a situation where there's been a rash of thefts from lockers, or you're having a situation where staff morale seems to be dipping, especially given the fact that, let's say you have a situation in real time that people can't be together physically, and we're all doing our meetings on Zoom, and we're not really getting a sense of really good feedback and getting under, and people are feeling the need for social interaction, and there's a big gap there. So different people initially go to a certain comfort zone in how they process info. Now, this is not linear necessarily. It's not like someone does just objective and not reflective, or someone does interpretive and not decisional. We all do all four in some way, but our sort of our comfort zone, or the area that we most gravitate towards first, is usually one of these four. So if we're saying that, again, let's take the example, a benign example of that there's been a rash of thefts from lockers in the school hallways in this high school. So the one person, let's say person A, let's in this case person B, looks at it from an objective point of view. They're saying, okay, what are the facts? You know, like what was stolen? You know, when did it take place? After school? In school? Was there any, you know, just real straight up facts? Okay, info. Now, the next person, D in this case, is reflective on it. His or her response is not necessarily what the facts are. Immediately, he or she goes to, oh my gosh, the emotions involved. They're thinking about what are the implications, not the implications, but what they start feeling like anxious about the fact that there have been thefts in the building. They start feeling about, it starts associating, they start associating with, you know, a situation they had when they were younger, when they got something stolen from them. So they're not so much focused on the facts, they're focused on their reactions and their emotions about it. Now, person C is hearing, again, all these people in the room, all these sort of staff members are all hearing the same piece of info from their principal or from their head of school or from their CEO or COO, and they're all processing it differently. The person C is processing interpretive already. What's the meaning behind this? Like, what is this going to mean for student morale? What is this going to, is this going to have an implication towards that we need more security in the building? You know, that we, does this mean that our school culture might be affected because of our, you know, because of our, these new type of infiltration? And finally, person A, in this case, is looking at decisional outcomes, meaning they're going straight. They're not processing the facts. They're not having a specific emotion about it necessarily. They're not even interpreting it right away. They're going straight to decisional, which they're saying, okay, what do we do about this immediately? Okay, we need a new security guard. We need a new security cameras. We need, you know, we need to lock the building, you know, whatever, all sorts of things. So here you have four different people, and you have four different ways of understanding this information. So the problem is obvious, right? Or I would actually ask you if I can open the chat box for a moment. What might be the problem, attendees, if you have four people in the room and four people are responding in different ways initially? Let's just take 30 seconds to see if anyone wants to chime in about what might be the issue of if four people in the room are all hearing things in a different way or processing them differently. All right, it could be that we need a little bit more time, or it could be that I'm not, there's no shared reality. There we go. Lynn Smith, thank you. There's no shared reality. There's no joined collective experience, right? They're all experiencing it differently. Very good. Okay, again, so this is an issue that there was thefts in the classroom, in the lockers, from the lockers. 4 people are sitting around the meeting. Okay, here we go. Jason, short, thank you. They're all going to respond according to the way they process the info. Exactly, which is going to be different. They'll all be all over the place, right? Naftali reminds me, yes, please respond to all attendees. Put your settings to respond to all panelists and all attendees. Okay, let's move on. Thank you for those examples. Let's move on to the next slide. And let me talk to you more about, let me flesh this out a little bit more in terms of the model we're talking about. I probably need a little bit more information about what this is all about. Some people call this, in the ICA, people call it ORID, O-R-I-D. That's their terminology, not mine. I call it the strategic conversation model. Excuse me, I have to go back. So, objective level questions. So, again, we're talking about the person who's seeing things objectively. Again, we're at that same staff meeting, and they're thinking about facts and objective data. If you were, let's say, having a meeting where you were displaying artwork from the students, right? They wouldn't start interpreting the artwork. They wouldn't start feeling emotion about whether the art is touching them in a certain way. And they wouldn't be thinking either about whether we should go ahead and start monetizing this in an art show as a fundraiser. So you see, those 3 people are thinking reflective, interpretive, and decisional. None of them have thought objectively. Nothing wrong with that. But they haven't even gotten to a place where they're already past just taking it in. They're past just looking at the art for what it is. The fact that these kids went out at whatever age and created some great artwork, right? So to keep things back to the main example of the theft in the classroom, lockers. I know this is far away because we haven't had school in so long, so I'm getting confused, but the objective level questions, just again, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, facts, objective data. Reflective level, the reflective level is we're looking at emotions, memories, and associations, imagination. Interpretive level, to elicit sharing of experiences and individual meaning. So what's the meaning behind it? Is you're building collective consciousness and you're sharing awareness with the group, et cetera, et cetera. On the decisional level, we develop deeper meaning, and we actually are looking to see what are the next steps. So what I'm sharing here with you now, so there's a lot of layers to this. Let me go to this screen. This is just, again, a general capsule of the 4 levels of how people process information. Again, objective, reflective, interpretive, decisional. So now, this can be used in many, it can be used in hundreds of ways. It's extremely effective. Here we're talking about specifically feedback from after you had your meeting. So here's what you would do. Instead of asking, what would be a normal question would be, how'd the meeting go? You know, like, what did you think about it, Barbara? Or Jack, you know, did it make sense? Yeah, okay, great. So at most you're getting a 1 word or 1 syllable or sort of a very banal type of response. This model allows you to actually get much richer and authentic responses, and also in real time. Okay, you don't have to wait for you don't even have to do a feedback document, if you will. Like sometimes, you're at a workshop, you get a feedback thing from the conference organizer, whatever. Those are fine, those are good. But here you go, you get real time. When I give workshops, for example, when I teach, so Naftali earlier mentioned the book that I wrote, The Nonprofit Secret. So one of the areas that I focus on in my consulting group is board governance, the relationship between boards and heads, and that's what my book is about. and the ramifications of a good partnership and a not so good partnership. So if I'm teaching one of the 6 principles, because there are 6 principles of successful board, head, or CEO or principal partnerships. So if I'm teaching that, then I would, instead of just saying, what do you think of that principle? Well, then I would instead say, okay, here's my O question. Okay, my O question, let's say I just taught a principle. I just taught a principle with LE at the end. I just taught an idea, a system. Okay. What principle, what idea in that principle jumped out at you? What idea jumped out at you? What idea, that's an O question. An R question would be, in what way did this idea excite you? In what way did this make you anxious, right? Interpretive would be, what is this meaning? What's the meaning of this? What difference would this make in your life, in your organization? And the decisional one is like, what do we do? How do we take this principle and put it into action? One cute way of sort of seeing how this all works is what. O is what. Objective is what happened, what is going on. R is gut, like your emotional, your gut feelings. I, interpretive, is so what. Okay, so what? What does this all mean? What's the meaning behind this? And finally, now what is decisional. What do we do now? So again, it's a cute way of sort of conceptualizing these 4 steps. What, gut, so what, and now what? All right, so let's go back to, again, our staff meeting. So there were some thefts or some robberies or whatever they were from the lockers of kids, iPads or iPods or various earbuds or whatever else that were stolen, right? So here we are in the staff meeting, faculty meeting, whatever it is, and we are discussing how this all plays out. So we talked about some ideas, we talked about some things that we could do. Okay, now we're at the end of the meeting. We're at the end of the meeting, and objectively, okay, so we're going to ask an objective question to your group, to your staff meeting. You're saying, what jumped out at you today? Like, what really struck you from our meeting today? So you might get a response like, wow, I didn't know that this could happen, but whatever. And then the reflective question would be, okay, how does this make you feel? So you're clearly going to get some things like maybe angry, anxious, upset, because this is going on in my school building, right? And that there are some students who I teach that might be, engaged in this type of behavior. Interpretive. So what does this mean? Again, what does this mean for our school culture? What does this mean for our experience, kids' experience in the school? And decisional is like, again, what do we have to do? Security guard and all that, or types of monitoring or whatnot. Okay, so here you go. So I just layered in, instead of just saying, what did you feel about this? Like we just had the meeting, you walk out, blah. Instead, what you're doing is you're engaging everybody in a fashion that addresses all 4 of the ways people process information. And you're also doing it in a way that's actually methodical. You're starting with the low-hanging fruit. You're starting with the O, the objective piece. This also eliminates potential anxiety and sort of various emotions, because if you go straight to the reflective piece, you don't allow people to really just know what actually happened. So you have to go to the O first. okay? On the converse side, if you don't go on the reflective piece, when was the last time you were at a meeting and someone asked you at the end of the meeting, did anything make you feel anxious? It's never heard, right? You never hear that question. And the reasoning is because usually people who are running a meeting like this, first of all, no one really wants to hear it, usually wants to hear feedback like that. In a vacuum, a question like that would be a inappropriate question to ask in a vacuum. Oh, I see a lot of scowls on people's faces. You know, are you all upset about something? Right? That's just like, first of all, it's assuming, and it's going straight. Again, you're skipping the O part. This is the order you do it in, ORID. The O part, the objective part, just sort of levels the playing field. It allows people to really just take it in, see what's going on, look around. It's almost like it's almost like a I wouldn't say meditative, but it allows people to just, okay, levels the playing field, allows people just to see what just took place. And then the R is like, okay, now that we know what took place, now we can start thinking, what does this mean? What is this? How does this, what is this? What are your feelings around it? The thing is, asking that question, like, what made you feel anxious, in a vacuum is a dangerous question. But if you ask it in a context of this, in a strategic conversation way, you're actually allowing people to have the opportunity in a safe way, in a safe space, in a safe way to express their feelings. Now, you don't have. In fact, when I do this, let's say I'm whatever meeting I'm having a meeting. I taught a workshop. I just completed a strategic plan with an organization. There's going to be a lot of emotions, right? So again, I talk first. Oh, like what stood out from the strategic plan? Say the strategic plan had 5 or 6 goals. What stuck out? What jumped out at you? Next question. The R question could be, there's a number of possibilities. And by the way, I'm going to share with you, as we get towards the end of this webinar, I'm going to share with you sample questions as well. So the R question would be, first of all, what excited you? What made you feel more confident today than you weren't yesterday? Okay. Now, to balance that and to allow for real, true, authentic feedback, you might want to ask a question, or in my case, I do ask this question. What might have made you, not necessarily anxious, what might have made you feel, let's just use that because we're using that for now. What might have made you feel anxious? What might have made you feel uncomfortable? So in this context, now again, there's a caveat I have to mention, that I'm making the assumption that this is a generally good type of culture in your building that you're working with to begin with. Not a perfect culture, but a decent enough culture that this type of conversation can take place. If you're in a toxic culture, if you're in a toxic situation where there's a type of environment where feedback is not allowed, or is there's a draconian way of running meetings and whatnot, doesn't mean you can't change from that. But you have to realize that to just jump into this model, into the strategic conversation model, without some work on culture, is not going to be a slam dunk. In those cases, when you need some cultural things to work out, you might be better served first by, for example, bringing in a professional facilitator to help, clear the air and to create a appropriate type of sort of space to allow this to happen. I know this is some of the work that many people do, including both me and Naftali. So that's one option. But let's say you do have a pretty decent culture already. So you have a space to be able to lead this type of conversation. So we were at O, we were at R. We asked the question about what made you confident or what made you anxious. Now interpretive. Okay, what does this mean? What does this mean for us? What is this? What's the significance of this? What is the crux of the issue, right? And then decisional. You know, what are we going to do about this? Now, the example that I gave you of the robberies in the building, in the classroom. I keep saying classroom. I want to go back to the classroom. I want my kids to go back to the classroom. Robberies among in the hallways and the lockers. So that by itself, you can have a strategic conversation about. Example, instead of just walking into a staff meeting and saying, we had all these problems, what are we going to do about it? First of all, if you just do that and said, we had all these issues, what are we going to do about it? We go straight to D. Nobody had a chance to know the facts. Nobody had a chance to reflect on their feelings about it. Nobody had a chance to interpret anything. And you go straight to a decision. That doesn't work, folks. Okay? So the example I just gave you is actually, you can do this in a conversation. You want to address a certain point. Remember, today's discussion is about feedback, but it could be used in so many different ways. We're getting back to feedback now. So let's say you did have a comment. You had the conversation about, yeah, forgive me, I'm Jewish, I use my hand, so see, okay. And I got bothered about these glasses. I'm trying to get a better angle here, okay. So you had the conversation about this rash of robberies, okay? Whatever way you had it, let's say you had it in some, upside down way. At least now, you can actually get feedback from your group about whether you actually got anywhere. So you had your discussion, this whole discussion back and forth about, the various issue, the surprising incident or set of incidents. Now you ask the group, okay, what are the facts? And you allow people to ask, you allow people to actually share, to make sure that there's a level playing field, that people know what's going on. Then you ask the question about a reflective question. By the way, you as the facilitator, okay, this is a facilitative model. If you're leading the group, you don't actually have to be the one leading these questions. You can actually have one of your staff members lead it. In certain cases, that might be actually more valuable to do it. Again, there's a value, certainly if there's a very big question on the table, a huge, let's say, a doozy, always an outside facilitator is beneficial. But you may not have the luxury to do that often. So you want to at least get the tools to be able to do this in your house. So again, so there we go. So then you're having you had the conversation, you had the staff meeting, you're at the end, and now you're going to go ahead and you're going to ask the O, R, and the I, and the D at the end, and the types of questions that will elicit true, authentic feedback. Okay. So I'm actually going to now show you four sheets on these questions. Whoops, let's go back. Okay, objective questions. So these are examples of objective questions that you could ask at the first stage of objective. Again, you had your meeting. This is about feedback, right? What are some of the things we did today? Okay. What scenes do you remember? What facts do we know about the situation? Obviously, depending on the type of meeting, these questions need to be thought of in advance. You can't just sort of just throw it out and it doesn't really apply. What do you think of when we say the word, etc., when we said these words? Okay, let me just check the chat. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yes, you could be, yes. You could ask this question. You could ask this question as I said earlier, let's say you're having the discussion about the thefts in the building. You can actually, in fact, this is, I would argue, is the more not robust, but is the more traditional way of doing this strategic conversation. Embedded in your staff meeting, like you have 5 items in your staff meeting. Let's say you have 1 or 2 that are big ones. You would want to have a strategic conversation around that in of itself. Okay. However, generally, if you're having a general transactional meeting when there's no big, you're having your finance and accounting meeting, weekly meeting or whatever, and you want to go ahead and it's pretty drawl and pretty standard. You'd be surprised though. You're going to have a lot of different feelings on the matter, and if you do 5 minutes at the end, 5 to 10 minutes at the end of this type of strategic conversation, you'll get feedback about whether anyone really had what really happened here. So going back to the objective question, okay. So these are the examples. Now let's go to R. Reflective questions. Again, this depends on the context of what your discussion was and what your meeting was about. If you're having a standard fare finance and accounting meeting, you're not going to necessarily ask what parts reminded of your own childhood or something. However, if you're having a conversation about going back to the classroom, I have this block, hallway situation with the theft, you're going to want to maybe ask, when you were a student in school, did something like this happen? Or was what's most exciting? Where are you confused, etc., etc.? I questions. Okay, what's the importance of this? What new vantage point has it given us? What difference will it make? Etc., etc. How is it beneficial to you personally, right? Here you are, you're a middle manager, or you're a assistant principal, you're a division head, you're a head of the upper school, you're a COO, you're the chief fundraising officer, all these types of things. How is this beneficial to you personally, right? What questions did this raise for you? What changes will we need to make? Decisional. Now these are really, really, these are decisional, and these are like, what does this mean for our future? How do you title our final product? What are we really committed to? Okay. So let's do this now. Let's go back for a minute. I'm actually going to, let's stay on this screen and let's do a model. What happened here? Okay, here we go. Okay, let's just go back to that screen. All right, actually, let's stay here. Let's go back to the top screen. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to try to do this with the chat box to make sure that we make this right. I'm going to do now, we talked about this ORID, and we're also leaving 10 minutes at the end for Naftali to do some wrap up. So we've got about 10 minutes left of my presentation. So I'm going to ask you right now the 4 types of strategic conversation questions of this meeting. Okay? So I'm going to ask you, let's actually go to the O questions. Okay. I'm going to ask you, what words stand out? What words stood out today in our little webinar here tonight? Okay, so start, if you can reply to not just panelists, but also to all attendees, so we can all see that. Focus conversation, says Cora, thank you. Again, what words stood out for you today in our webinar? What words stood out? Just look at words. Yeah, there we go. Strategic, authentic, ORID, okay. Acronym ORID, strategic, yeah. Very good. Okay. So what really happens just now is all we're doing, again, this is like the level playing field question. All we're doing here is just what words, what did you hear? Like what caught your attention? That's the type of question we're asking here. Okay. Now again, this is a question you would ask at the end of your meeting. Feedback. And also it could work, as you can see, on a Zoom meeting, because you can actually do what we're doing. We're getting chat boxes and whatnot. And if you have like a decent group of people that you know, it's easier to certainly, oh, okay, so Kathleen, or Laura, okay, I hear, All right, let's do an R question for our group. And again, please put in the chat box. Let's do the question, let's do this. We'll ask these two questions. Where are you really clear, and where might you be confused? Where are you really clear? Let's start with that. Please put in the chat box, what are you clear about from this webinar? Or what to do, what are you clear about from this webinar? Yeah, let's ask that question. So please use your chat box, and what are you clear about from this webinar? Different people require different approaches, the different types of questions and the need for each. Very good. Good, both good responses. Covering ORID at the end of a meeting, 4 quadrants. Good. 4 quadrants of participation. Different categories and purposes. Okay. All right. Must ask questions for each type of thinker, exactly. And that's a good point, because while you're on, she's on reflective and he's on interpretive, and nobody even got through the objective piece, and someone's still waiting to know what the facts were. The progression through the different orientations when addressing a problem, etc. Very good, Jason, thank you. Cora, thank you. All right, and finally, Laura, choosing type of question solicits certain information you're looking for. That's true too. You could use this in a very targeted manner. The next question is, where were you confused? Was there any area that you were confused today? Use the chat box, any area that you were confused about. Again, we didn't have a lot of time to unpack this, but again, it just gives you an idea of how you need to end any type of conversation, like I'm doing right now. I'm actually modeling what I'm preaching by having, and I'm asking a question that may not be super comfortable, even for me, because I need feedback in terms of if I didn't share things clearly enough. Where might you be confused? Okay, Christy answers, everything was clear to me. Okay, thank you. Kate, should the meeting facilitator introduce this model to a group they are leading? Okay. Kate, on that one, please ask me offline. I can address that. I don't have time to get to that question, but you can email or call me on that. Colleen, not completely clear on which a specific question might fit. Okay, so here, as you're going to get this example, they're going to get this webinar recording, you'll be able to go back to these 4 sheets, OR and ID, where a question might fit. Pretty clear from Laura. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next slide and ask you an interpretive question, okay? What new vantage point has this given us? What new vantage point has this given us? So by learning about this ORID, or this strategic conversation, then what? Okay, and let me just quickly address from Jason. Good question. How to handle if a staff member jumps ahead to decisional if I'm still talking about objective? Again, I can expand on that if you want to email me, but the main thing is you, as a sort of quote facilitator, or whoever's doing the facilitation, has to stay in the objective space. You don't allow the conversation to be ransacked by someone who wants to jump in at a different stage. You're the facilitator, and you're allowing and that's why actually in certain cases that's why an outside facilitator or a staff member acting or as a facilitator would be maybe more better. Thank you, more better. Sounds good. Cora, being able to get, so we asked the question, What new vantage point has this given us? Being able to get feedback from several different thinkings, expanding all thinking, very good. Kathleen, seeing all the bases in order to ensure all bases are covered, like the bases of a long lost baseball game, right? Okay. Any other chat box on vantage point this has given us? Wow, I'm not sure what that means, but Kathleen, maybe you can expand on that. Okay. Last chance for vantage point this strategic conversation idea has given us. Thank you, Laura. Inclusion for the various thoughts. Yeah, this allows everybody to have a place at the table. This is an incredibly inclusive model. It allows everyone to have a seat at the table. Baseball analogy. Oh, she's crying. Kathleen, thank you. We want baseball back. Oh, we definitely want baseball back. Okay. I've actually done this exact strategic conversation with a group remotely just on this virus that's going on in the country. Like, this is a client, this is a nonprofit that I work with, and we just wanted to have sort of a conversation via Zoom. And we had, like the 28 people who were on it, and we all, we had a conversation of going through these 4 steps about the coronavirus. All right, let's ask the last question. Oh, well, last right here, Jason provided me a way to present a problem and work through a process rather than just throwing it out there, trying to make a decision without tackling the problem through the other 3 orientations first. Thank you for that, really good. Okay, last, decisional. So this is the final decisional question. So let's ask the question. What does this mean for our future? What does this mean for our future? So please put in the chat box. We got just a couple minutes before I give it over to Naftali. Oh, here we go. Cora, better communication. What does this mean for our future is the question I'm asking you. What does this mean for our future? Better communication, thank you. What else? What does this mean for our future? For your future, in your organization, in your school, in your nonprofit, in your business, and wherever you are involved. Christy, it gives us the ability to make meetings meaningful to all participants. Yes, thank you. Very true. Laura, to have a more firm or understanding of my strategic questions and results. Good. Very good. Getting the best thinking from everyone. Very true. Kate, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you get the best of the best this way, right? That's true. Okay, last call for anything on what does this mean for our future. It will also make peer participants feel valued 100,000%, Christy, yes. People feel valued when they're heard and when they're being able to express themselves, and this allows them that, no question. Okay, let me close off that. So here, this is a link for the book, The Nonprofit Secret. If you are involved in any shape or form with the board or head of the organization, school, nonprofit, even a corporation, the relationship between the board and the principal, head of school, CEO, that's what that book's about. So you can check it out. You can find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook also. And there's a contact info when we based in Texas and in New York offices. All right. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. And I am going to find a way to give this back to Naftali through stopping the host. Let's see how I can do that.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much. Really enjoyed listening to you, and I think that your process and getting us thinking about the different quadrants was really a critical component. Let's see if I can start my video. Seems like I'm not yet the host. So until you switch me over, I won't be able to do that. So keep working on it, please. Maybe you can find me in the participants component, go into panelists.
Okay,
And then
there
when
we
you
go.
find me there, you should be able to go into more and switch it back.
I just did, yes.
Okay, so let's try it now. It's still telling me I can't, so give me another second. We'll try it again. Oh, here we go. Hi, everybody. It's me again. Jonathan, great job, like I said. And so here are a couple of things I wanted to give you. First of all of those incredible links that I just shared with you. Number one, anybody who wants to learn more, you see, Jonathan and I are going to be working together on some really important offerings. It's not yet on my website, but I did include other pieces of my personal educational offerings there. Anyone who needs a certificate, you have a link to that. And of course, anyone who wants to be part of a mastermind group, there are a number of different forms that I included in the links. But I did want to share with you what Jonathan and I were talking about, because he and I are both former heads of school. So we're both leaders and have leadership expertise. He's been working a lot in the non-for-profit space. I've been kind of moving between the non-for-profit education in particular, as well as the for-profit space. And so we do a lot of work in supporting leaders themselves, oftentimes with governance issues or relating to those that they report to, strategic planning, vision, a lot of the pieces that are necessary, not so much the grunt work in the day-to-day, although we could help there as well. It's mainly in terms of helping leaders leverage their own abilities and those around them to produce the very best outcomes organizationally and otherwise. So we've identified the opportunity, the synergy that exists between us to be talking to school leaders and saying to them, you know, working with us is going to really create an opportunity. And I don't want to limit this just to school leaders, because again, as I said, really anybody who is in a leadership capacity, we know what you're going through. We understand your challenges. We understand the opportunities that are in front of you, and we'd like to be able to help. So you have Jonathan's contact information. I think I can quickly type in mine as well. Anybody who is interested in having a conversation specifically to, especially as you're looking at next year, or however, next academic year or this current year, but just post-corona, and you're looking at what the future might look like, you want to brainstorm with us a little bit, get some insights, and to kind of unpack this further. Hopefully you know by now what I can bring to the table, because many of you are returnees. Jonathan is new, but I think he delivered a ton today, and just gives you a slight insight into the power that the two of us together could bring, I think, and whatnot. And Jonathan, you could elaborate here as well,
Yes.
if you'd like. But that's really, I think, the opportunity here that we'd like to present to you, and certainly invite you to reach out to us if you feel we could be adding value to your work in the present or with an eye towards the future. Jonathan, did you want to add?
Yeah, again, I appreciate the opportunity that Naftali, you've given me and the group to be able to have more synergy between us to provide value to the participants and the people that, both in my world and in your world, which the worlds intersect, really we can add, provide, especially in this time of uncertainty and of challenging times, that the more that we can work with people and work with groups, boosting morale, getting a better strategy, getting a better vision, making sure that groups are much more aligned is really crucial at this time.
Okay, awesome. Before we wrap up, are there any final questions, either for Jonathan from his presentation or for the two of us? Any particular pain point, any particular challenge, and you're wondering maybe we can help you? Please put that into the chat, or if you wanted any type of review related to Jonathan's presentation, he might have to continue this offline, but at least he'd like to know, I think, you know, what other questions may exist from your end before we call this a day. And I do want to include also, again, a link to registration for tomorrow's webinar for anybody who's interested in learning more about memory and retention. The link to register is here. You're welcome, Tiffany, and thank you so much for your feedback.
Thank you,
Please
Tiffany.
go ahead and register, because it's going to be, like I said, very, very useful. It's one of my favorites, and I certainly hope that you will join me in that conversation. So since there's nothing else here, I'm going to, at this point, wrap things up. Thank you again for your participation. And Ruth, to answer your question, the answer is yes. There will be a recording sent via email to your inboxes tomorrow. So you will get that. And thank you all again for being here. And please tell your friends about all the fun we're having on these webinars. My plan is to keep them going as long as they will add continued value. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and you know how to reach us if we could be of service to you. Bye now.